AJ, I will respond twofold. I guess I'll respond first to the question about why one would want to be a Green Lantern. And FYI, I don't see myself as Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan's arrogant. He's self-centered, cocky, brash, a womanizer, afraid of commitment. He lives life on the edge. He doesn't ever come up with a plan. He doesn't live life by a plan. So yeah, I'm pretty much remove the womanizing part, and yeah, you might have a point. Nicely played. Well played, sir. Well played. Though I do think you think yourself as Wade Wilson, which is just, why would anybody want to be Wade Wilson? Who knows? As far as a Green Lantern and liking the comics, it's simple, really. The theology of Green Lantern is phenomenal. You're talking about wielding the most powerful weapon that comes in the tiniest thing of a ring. Okay, that is the weapon, in a ring. And the only way to control it is through your willpower of your imagination. So anything you can construct in your mind, you create through this ring. And you project this image that becomes real. It's fascinating, because in order to do so, in order to harness such power, it hurts like hell to do it. It burns and wears you out. It feels like you haven't slept for days. This is coming from Green Lantern Rebirth by Jeff Johns, when they were reintroducing Hal Jordan back into the mainstream after Hal Jordan became Parallax and then the Spectra and so forth. So now he's officially a Green Lantern. I'm behind on everything once Blackest Night started, and I gotta catch up with Brightest Day. But it's the whole idea that the Green Lantern is not alone. There are thousands, so I think 3,000, close to 3,000 Green Lanterns, one for each sector of space. And they all are chosen. Much like many of us who enter in the ministry feel that we are chosen to be ministers, likewise the Green Lantern has to be chosen. Also, the Green Lantern has to overcome his or her fear in order to master or to wield the ring. And what I liked about the movie, and some folks didn't like this because they thought it was against the character of Hal Jordan, I disagree, was that he didn't feel like he could master it, that he didn't have the possibility to overcome such great fear. But the truth is, he did, and it takes some time to discover, but in order to do so, one has to overcome great fear, or overcome fear in general. And that's, and I know you don't believe that fear should be overcome, that you can't really overcome it, or that it's wrong, not wrong to overcome it, but that you don't have to. And between us, I think your understanding of overcome is just completely different than my understanding of it. From a theological standpoint, ministers overcome certain fears every day. You say you use your fear, and that's a part of you, and a part of your Asperger's, if it's alright if I brought that in. If not, I apologize. But for me, there are certain things I have to overcome. I have to overcome my fear of not being able to trust congregations in order to love them. And one way that I've discovered to do that is that I have to understand or come to terms that the unconditional love that I give a congregation is not always returned to me. Their love still at times comes with conditions. They may not realize it, they may not know it, but it does. And there are times that my love to them comes with limits and conditions. And that's unfortunate. And so that's what I have to overcome in order to truly minister to someone. So that's why I choose a Green Lantern. And then also, green's my favorite color, and anybody who gets to use their imagination is pretty cool. Now, if Batman had a Green Lantern ring, well, the whole world would just be FUBAR. Oh, we really need to establish whether or not we're allowed, the language we're allowed to use on here, FYI. I may get in trouble. Okay, other response to your VBS question. Vacation Bible School's been around, what, since the 40s, maybe 50s? I'm not entirely certain of the tradition of it. I know the church I'm serving at now has a proud history of being the Vacation Bible School church in Virginia. I think in 1960 something they had the most kids ever recorded, and it was like 60 something, 65, maybe 100. I don't know. It's an up there number that was crazy. I don't have my history stuff with me, so I can't really honestly reflect that. But going to your questions, why we still do VBS, I think it is more the evangelistic thing. It definitely is a Southern Baptist thing that they stick to, and part of I mean, I'm speaking from a Baptist standpoint. I'm not sure about the Presbyterian, but I know for Baptist it is a part of an outreach thing, outreach program, and a way to bring people in. But it is an extension of Sunday school. In fact, our former associate minister really wanted to get rid of VBS because he thought it's run its course. And I think it has, to an extent. Some of the VBS material is pretty good, others not so good. And I've read of people taking their chances and creating their own material. Something I think you would probably find very interesting. One group, one church in particular, the pastor and his wife, or maybe it was the education minister and his wife, came up and did a whole VBS series on the Apostles' Creed. Each day had a statement from the creed, and so they would explore that, and they would read it and talk about it, and everything was centered around it. And so that's how the children learned the Apostles' Creed. Which is an interesting, it's very interesting. I'm not much of a creed type person, but that was a neat thing to read, that they took something that was kind of heavy and were able to make it geared towards children and keep the heaviness, but much like the first probably 3 Harry Potter books, where they were able to mix in the serious tones of it all and keep the heaviness of the story mixed in with the lighter moments that made it really a kind of a children's book. Of course, you could argue later on, I argue the Goblet of Fire, although I would argue from a movie standpoint, not having read the books, that The Prisoner of Azkaban is when Harry Potter takes a darker turn and starts to lose its childlike appeal. But I think that's probably, that's true to the movies, because Harry goes from being, 11? Is that correct? 11, and then by the time this last one comes out on Friday, he'll be 18. So 7 years of school. So the books grow as he grows, and it gets darker and darker. But of course, the story gets darker. What am I talking about? Oh, the Apostles' Creed, heaviness. So that was something interesting. But I do think Vacation Bible School has probably run its course, but it's something we do because of tradition. And it's one of those things where tradition is still good. Vacation Bible School still has its positive moments. It's the planning and the preparation that's all just a pain in the butt. So, and that's not the word I want to use, but again, we got to clarify whether or not our language, and I don't know who's all watching this, and I just don't want to get a phone call. Joseph's a bad word. Anywho, so yeah, I think one of the things to look at, or be a possibility to talk about, is how to take. I mean, we're talking education, and this is something you probably, you're part of something that you know and that you're into, is educating. I mean, we're talking about discipleship basically when it comes to VBS, and why do we do VBS? Why do we do Sunday school? Why do we do small groups? Why do we do this discipleship stuff? And that in turn becomes, if we can figure out why we do that, I mean, the sense of it all. We can argue that we do it because, well, one has to follow Christ. One has to grow in Christ. Yes, absolutely. All those that's absolutely true. But why those routes? Why is this, what we are doing, considered discipleship? Our conversations through Facebook, our conversations through this vlog, our conversations through blogs, and through ogres and ogs and logs and cogs and dogs and bogs and beer. Does that count as discipleship? And I would argue that it does. Absolutely. To me, it's a good argument that discipleship has to expand what we are accustomed to. And I think, to your point about VBS, is that VBS is a part of a tradition that we're not 100% sure as to why we are doing it. We just do it. So I think for you, and I think this is true for any church that does Vacation Bible School, it's identifying why are we doing this. I think a lot of churches have that issue, that we don't define why we are doing this. We don't cast that, the good old Baptists like to say, cast the vision. What's the vision? Well, it's true here with VBS and with anything the church does. Why are we doing it? Are we seeking to grow the church in the sense of numeric value, where people look at us and go, woohoo, we're big, we're great? Or are we looking at it to go and saying, okay, kids, here's this person who is going to radically change your life. In fact, he's going to mess your life up. Jesus will be the greatest thing that ever happens to you and the worst thing that ever happens to you. He will make your life so wonderful, and at the same time, he says you will be hated because of me. It's fascinating. We are told that we are loved by Christ, but the world hates us because we follow Christ. Now, in our world today, that's been taken and turned, especially in America. That means the liberals will hate you, or the conservatives will hate you. Like, we end up hating each other. So it's going back to the original point that I wandered off of into the field of lilies. VBS is a part of a tradition that I would argue that we really need to examine as to why we are doing VBS, and not limit ourselves to a week. I know, remember once in a church I was working at in Oklahoma, we did VBS throughout the summer. It basically did every Wednesday night through the summer was like VBS. And it was a pretty cool thing. I thought it was perhaps one of the more well thought out, well put together, well received ideas. Okay, well, it's been 15 minutes.